Greetings everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I have decided to do something that I don't usually do on this channel. So today I managed to get a no bomb no card run of this game, and I felt like doing a post commentary of it. Just so I could talk about the game more, talk about the run. Sounded like a fun idea. So this is post commentary. And so what is a no bomb no card condition? So the no bomb condition is pretty self-explanatory. You attempt to beat the game without using any bombs, and what that basically means is that you can't really cheese through attacks by bomb skipping them. And you also didn't get the luxury of, well, a lot of mistakes, because if you fail to dodge something, you die. You can't bomb your way out of it, so you get less misses to work with. No card is basically giving up any active or passive inventory slots. So basically going in with your character as raw as possible. And in this game, it's a bit of a unique phenomenon, unique situation to be in, because the way Zune had balanced this game is that the characters themselves, without any equipment, are rather weak. The cards themselves are there to boost your character's performance. So you've got the Saki Wolf, for instance, to boost your main shot's damage, amongst other things as well. I could get into like what the cards do, but honestly I really don't know them all off the top of my head, so I'm not even going to attempt that. Anyway, so No Bomb No Card presents an interesting challenge to this game, because your power loss is rapid in this game. I'm sure anyone who's played this game has dealt with the frustrations of that. There are cards to mitigate that, such as the Tanuki and such. There's also the Koishi hat. At least I think it's the Koishi hat that reduces your power loss. But in No Bomb No Card Run, you can't use those for obvious reasons. Well, sort of. I guess you could if you wanted to. I mean, but I didn't do it for this because I want full no passives, no actives. I mean, you could make your own no bomb conditions, like adding certain passives if you wanted to, but for the condition I'm doing, no passives. So basically the one power loss is quite brutal, because the enemies in this game in general have lots of HP, or rather, your characters themselves just aren't as powerful as they usually are, because they're meant to be using the cards to power them up in various different ways. So what that ultimately culminates in is a situation where your power is very valuable. And yeah, the shop screen never shows on replays. But I did buy a life there. I am allowing myself to buy lives and power items. Those are the two allowances that I gave myself. So I did buy a life. So as I was saying, this game, because of the enemy's HP, as well as your character's generally low shot power, if you're not at full power in the later stages of the game, then the enemies can overwhelm you, and this game really likes its spam sections. There will be many parts of the game where you'll just get a flood of enemies on screen, and if you're really low power, especially 1 or 2 power, 3 power can sort of manage the game, but if you're at 1 or 2 power, those spam sections get fairly difficult, if not impossible. Well, impossible in quotes for human, or unless you're just really lucky. And what that means is that if you die a bunch in a row, like in quick succession, and you get to 1 or 2 power, it really, really ruins you. In fact, it's a very unique LMB. Very unique LMB because, unlike because in other games, for instance, you can recover quite well, even if you die, because you won't necessarily lose all your power. And even in games like UFO, being at like 1 or 2 power isn't the worst thing in the world, even on stage portions, but in this game it really matters if you're doing no bomb, no card. I mean, that's also kind of the, well, it's part of the meme chaotic appeal, although it is kind of brutal. Basically in this game, you have to do well on a consistent basis. You cannot make a lot of mistakes in the same general areas. It means that if you want to succeed, your mistakes need to be scattered. And I know I'm not necessarily talking about the Danmaku patterns, by the way, but it's just because I don't really have much to say about them. This is the early game, and I mean, a lot of the patterns in this early game are not difficult. I mean, stages 1 and 2. Stage 3 has some really hard patterns to it, but there isn't much to say about Takane or Mike or their stages, respectively. Anyway, as I was saying, actually, what was I saying? XD sloppy commentary. Anyway, let me think for a sec. It's been a long day. Alright, so as I was saying earlier, you need to make sure, well, I mean, obviously you're going to try your best, but it's very important that you don't chain die in this game, which gives it a unique factor, I guess. Run factor. So I go for the life again, because I'm at max power. So stage 3 is where this game starts to show its fangs. Although, you could argue that the last spell in stage 2 is a little bit threatening, and so is the last spell in stage 1, but they're not the worst things ever. You're usually going to capture those spells. So stage 3 isn't really notable for its stage section, although there is one part that's a little bit tricky. It's not that much of an issue with Reimu. So Reimu was buffed in the full game compared to the demo, so she does a decent amount of damage, and her unfocused amulets are pretty good at stages. They're not as good as Sanae, but they're enough to get by, with a sprinkle of luck on a few specific parts. So the first half of the stage is very, very easy. It's just streaming, easy restreaming. It's not very notable at all. And this mid-boss is the first real death trap in the run. Honestly, I argue it's just because of the weird visuals. The bright bullets on the background really doesn't blend well, and it can be frustrating and challenging to read those bullets sometimes. But it's not the worst thing ever. It's not the worst attack ever, so I mean, it can be done, and usually I do capture it. When the demo was out, I was really bad at that non, but I got a lot better at it, and I usually capture it now. But I will die to it from time to time. So these fairies right here aren't notable, but don't forget about them because there's a fairy that comes later that's similar to these that's kind of notable. So this is that spam section I was talking about. Stage 3, 4, and 5 all feature spam sections. This is the easiest one of the 3 spam sections by far, especially with Reimu and her unfocused amulets. You do have to focus sometimes to make dodges, but if you generally unfocus, you can clear out the enemies quite well. This overlap right here can be bad, although not with Reimu if you're doing good enemy killing. So this part here is very threatening on some of the crisscross dodges actually are dangerous, so you can't always try to dodge them as they crisscross. Sometimes you have to make different curved dodges. It's hard to explain, but I think you get the point. So Sanyo is the first real dangerous boss, and probably the second most dangerous boss in the game. Her first non-spell isn't actually that bad. It's fairly slow and it's easy to read, but the first spell is the first difficult spell in the game, like a really difficult spell in the game, if you're not counting like the Mike final. That death there was a little bit silly, but the spell is just very random and the overlaps are very brutal. It's very RNG based and very unfriendly. As you can see, I'm now at 3 power, which means I need to make sure I don't die again on Sanyo if possible, because it'll leave me with 2 power for stage 4. So it's kind of a scary thing in this condition, is that if you die, you need to make sure that you don't die again too quickly, because that will curse you. It's really insane, actually, the effect of the power loss I almost wonder if it's beneficial to learn pacifist roots in order to counter that. But if you're gonna go that far, you might as well just go for low miss / LNN, right? I would have died there, by the way, if it hadn't ended, so that was quite fortunate. And this is a non-spell that I struggle with a lot, although everyone else seems to find it pretty okay. I find that sometimes the waves are just tricky to read, and I'm on the last wave, and unfortunately I just blundered. That wasn't even a bad wave, I just blundered. I don't even know what happened there. Really weird death, but it just happens in Touhou, which puts me in a very dangerous situation. 2-power Reimu A cannot handle the stage 4 opener, so I'm gonna have to buy power between stages. And if I die to this spell, it's all over. So I was actually forced to capture this, basically, and it was a bit scary, but I did succeed. Some scary dodges at the end there, but the capture secures my ability to keep playing. So I didn't buy a life, which sounds crazy, but I went for the power instead, because I would have died here, most likely, if I had been at 2 power. Even at 3 power, you can see it's still a little tricky to manage, but you can just get by barely with 3 power. So stage 4 is the biggest death trap in the game, especially the stage portion, and there's a lot of places to die, and so you have to be very vigilant. And you need to get a little bit lucky too on some of the harder parts. So right now I'm just trying to get my power back because I know that there's a spam section coming soon and I want to be at max power for it if possible. Although unfortunately there just isn't enough power items on the stage to get me there. That's a big thing in this game actually, is that there's not that many power items in general dropping from enemies, so it is hard to get the 1 unit of power back. So I just unfocus and I hope for the best. 3 power is going to make this very difficult, but I'm still able to get by, thankfully. I got fairly good RNG, and so I managed to pass it. On the Meme Yang, that's what I'm calling it now. This part here is a timeout, and the strategy I use, I actually got it from Insei Rabbit, is I just follow the Yin Yang orb, and if you're like in the corner of the screen, the right corner, you can actually just sit still if there's no Mintos around and then move up because there's a bit of a safe spot there. So I do capture this, which is really nice. I really needed that capture actually. Because this part here, well, the next part rather, is fairly tricky. Now, at full power, this part here is usually not problematic, although, unfortunately, I blundered. I was being a bit too greedy with my unfocused dodging, which kind of ruined me. I should have just focused, but I was being a little bit greedy for damage. That would be dangerous. However, I'm able to get back my power, and there is a generous 0.5 power card right there. This part here, very, very, very brutal section if you're not at max power. Try going into this with 1 or 2 power and you'll understand. And I'm not even sure how Marissa would do this part, although I've never looked at Marissa runs and no one even plays as her, on Lunatic at least, so beats me. But I use my unfocused amulets to handle those enemies because if you let them live for too long, they'll just basically throw walls everywhere and you can get trapped quite easily and chain death on it. But I did manage to get my power back for the boss. So this is absolutely the hardest boss in the game, I think, no question. And only for one particular spell card. I find the non-spells fairly unproblematic. I usually don't fail them, although now that I say that I'm now cursed. So this is the hardest spell in the game by far. Very random, very unpredictable, and the hitboxes on these yin yangs are very big. So this is a very dangerous spell card. It lasts about 20 to 24 seconds. I'm trying to unfocus when I'm away from the boss so I can still damage it, and when I get near the boss I try to focus. That was a very nice capture actually, I'm quite proud of it. So these non-spells are, as I said, they're pretty easy. The third one is a little bit weird, but the first two are easy. And this spell here, The thing about this spell is that the only threatening part is the overlap between the two waves. As you can see, the bullets on the first wave didn't fully leave the screen, so in order to squeeze through the yin-yangs, you have to go to the side to do it reliably. If you know that though, then it's not too bad. Lost on spell is a little bit threatening, but I usually don't ever die to it, so I usually am not that worried about it. You just have to be watchful of those red drop bullets, those little red droplets. They can confuse you sometimes, I guess. And then the final spell is very similar to the first spell, except it's a lot slower and way easier in my opinion. This is more of an endurance test rather than anything else. It's just a spell card that lasts a long time. You're just gonna have to strap in and be patient, because you're not going to be able to take this down quickly at all, unless you have like the Centipede card or something, or Wolf card, but I'm not using those, so it's just gonna take a while. 33 seconds is actually not that bad, but it is long. So I can go for lives again, because I'm at max power, and that was a No Miss No Bomb stage 4 boss, which I'm really happy about getting in my first No Bomb No Card run. So the stage 5 portion is actually fairly simple outside of one section. There's one threatening part in this stage. Most of it's just streaming though. I actually really don't have a lot to say about the first half of the stage at all. It's really not that difficult. I'm not sure if it's hard as Marissa, but as Reimu, it's fairly trivial, and Sanae too, obviously. So on this part here with Reimu, you don't even need a strategy. You can do circular streaming, you can do U-shaped streaming, you can just mix and match, you can do whatever you want, honestly, as long as you're staying unfocused a lot. This part is really not that threatening as Reimu, or Sanae. Mid-boss is absolutely free because she can be cheesed with a misdirection strategy. It's quite funny. So what you want to do is you actually want to kill it at 0 seconds left. If you kill a pattern at 0 seconds left, it actually makes the stage section afterwards even shorter than if you had just timed it out, because there's a delay from the boss leaving after you kill it. If you time it out, the boss just leaves instantly. And the reason you have to time it out is because this part here is very, very difficult. You have to look at the yin-yangs while dodging, and you have to make sure that you kill them when they're grouping up like this. If you allow a lot of them to group up and stay alive for a long time, you will doom yourself. This is a very... you just have to manage your enemy kills quite well. Reimu is one of the better ones at it, though. Not as good as Sanae, though, probably. So the second half of the stage after the spam section is not really too notable or difficult. Just pay attention, honestly. You're not going to be hounded by too many crazy things after that spam section, so just kill enemies, make sure you are killing them. If you let these live, then you will have a bad time. And then this part here, not too bad. Just make sure you're killing enemies. If you don't kill them, you might have to make some... You might have to slip through double waves, like that are really close together, that are almost a wall, and that's really bad. But if you're killing these enemies effectively, you won't run into that situation, or if you do, it'll be very rare. This last fairy is not too bad as long as you just switch lanes. It's basically that one Kage, last spell rather. Okay, so I feel like people tend to underestimate the stage 5 boss a little bit, but Megumu is scary, mildly. A lot of the attacks aren't that difficult, but I'll explain what's so scary about Megumu. It's stage 6. The stage 6 portion is very difficult at low power, so if you die too many times on Megumu, then you are left with low power for stage 6, and that's the real scary part. So it's actually really important that you don't die more than 2 times on Megumu if possible. If you can manage that though, then you're in good hands. This first spell is just a memorization spell. It's very easy once you learn the trick. I just do like a stream down on the side of the screen for that purple wave, and it goes down very easily. The second non-spell is probably the most likely attack to die on, in my opinion, because it is very random. It plays a bit like Greatest Treasure, actually, but you only have to dodge 2 waves, so it's not the worst thing in the world, actually. But it is scary. This spell is also scary, although this spell is usually okay. I have heard that you can actually get, like, walled on this, like, actually impossible situations. I don't really run into those very often at all, but it is something to note. Be careful. Get lucky. This non-spell isn't too bad. I just get paranoid when I'm making the dodges. Those stars are a little bit tight together, but you just have to not be scared, basically. This spell is really awesome. I love it. It is a spell about strategy and routing. So what you want to do is you want to, well, what I do anyway is I lure, because those Mintos will aim at you, right? You want to lure them upwards, kind of in the middle of the star formation, and then take your time when going up, basically. You don't need to rush upwards super quickly. You just kind of take your time and look for what appears to be the safest gap. And then the final spell I despise. I have never captured this in a 1cc, as you can see, so it's not even a spoiler that I die here, because the spell history kind of shows. I've not learned how to do this efficiently, but I've always struggled with it. I find it very difficult to read the first wave of vertical lasers and the stars at the same time, because you have to read them both in order to get yourself a gap, and there's too many things going on at once. It really confuses me, and I'm just not used to this spell at all. So, yeah, shame that I died there, but only 1 death is fine. So we're in stage 6, and because I have max power, this stage is not going to be an issue. If I had been at 1 or 2 power, I would have been very worried. Reimu makes good work of this stage with just her ability to kill enemies super well. As long as you're unfocused a lot of the time, these enemies will die before they really get to do much. Although, as you can see here, I messed it up horribly. I didn't restream properly, and I kind of got myself walled there. I was actually quite furious at myself for that earlier when I was doing the run. My morale kind of died, because I'm like, oh geez, if I die to that, am I going to make it past the final boss? Obviously, I was successful, otherwise this video wouldn't exist, but it was a morale killer for sure. But it was okay. You can misdirect this non-spell, but I don't even bother to, because the dodging is just so easy that I don't even consider it a threat. So, I mean, if you just dodge in the middle, it looks scary, but it's not. It's really not. So anyway, second half of the stage is fairly straightforward as a Reimu, just unfocus a lot. I was extra vigilant because of the death earlier. I didn't want to die like that again, so I was, you know, making sure that I was paying attention and doing my streams, although you just don't really need to do much. The last few fairies are fairly easy as well, as long as you just kill them at a decent time. Don't leave them alive for too long, or you might get into wall situations. As long as you're killing them, then you eliminate the threat, basically. Alrighty, time for our final boss. So, thankfully there's no stage section after the final boss, so chain deathing at the final boss isn't the worst thing in the world. Like, I mean, it does suck to lose the power, but final boss is a lot of memo patterns, so no. If you can make it this far with a lot of lives, you should be okay. Unfortunately, started off rather bad there. I died on this non, and it was at this point that my morale actually kind of died. I was actually really concerned. I'm not that used to this boss yet. I mean, I'm pretty decent at the spell cards, but the non-spells I'm very bad at in general, so I had expected that I would probably die a lot more during the fight, and I might fail some of the spells, right? So I was a little bit nervous here. First spell is very strange because you spend most of it on a weird timeout, forced timeout phase, which I never really understood. I feel like this spell just kind of drags on more than it should, but it is what it is, right? So she does drop 0.5 power after that spell, which is very generous. The second non-spell is the easiest non-spell in the fight. I was fairly confident on this one. Then the second spell is also very easy. With Reimu anyway, you can just spin around and let your unfocused amulets do most of the work for you. There are some speed kill strats you can do, but I just spin around, take the safest route. This final boss is not too intense like most final bosses in Touhou. I find it's just a non-spell heavy fight, but if you can get past the non-spells, it's really not that bad. Pretty tame final boss, but absolutely never underestimate anything in Touhou. Unless it's a Lily White spell card from Sisyphus, then you can underestimate it. This non-spell is one of my least favorite ones because it's so fast, but I did manage to pass it, which capturing that non-spell gave me my morale back. And you might not think it, but morale does matter. You gotta be careful not to get too emotional during a run, because getting flustered when dying can actually worsen your performance for attacks that come after the part that you just died to, right? So, but capturing difficult attacks can increase your morale and make you play better on the next attacks afterward. It's kind of a weird phenomenon. That non-spell is really hard, by the way. It looked pretty easy, but I'm always scared by that non. That was actually the first time I've ever captured that non, I think, so really grateful for that. This spell is actually really easy. Just go between the green and the cyan wave at the start, and then just follow this until it makes you restream. But it's honestly not that much of a threat. It really isn't. It just lasts a long time. This wave here is a little bit scary, but you'll just have to make that little micro dodge there. If you can do that, you'll be fine. Okay, now for the last two spells. This spell here is basically a memorization card. I think it can change depending on her movement or something like that, but you're just making a few generalized memorization dodges. Like, you know the locations to be at to make each dodge. It's a little bit scary, but it is memo based, so it's not pure RNG hell. And the final spell rather. First phase can be trivialized by kind of point blinking to make these knives instantly activate by the aura that your character gets. It's a really funny thing. I like to do it just to bully the card. It's not even a hard phase, but I do it anyway. Don't do it on the second phase just because I find it a little bit riskier, to the point where it's not worth risking. Not even that hard, but I still don't do it. So my rule of thumb for the third phase, and I usually capture when I do this, is when you're activating the sidewalls, make sure to activate them, make sure there's a delay between each activation. Don't activate both sides of the wall at the same time. So activate one, and then activate the other, and then you should be fine. And on this spell, in this phase, my general rule of thumb is to spin around and make sure that you are frequently moving. Because if you stay in one place for a long time, you will get trapped. But if you're just making a nice flow, constant motion, you should be okay. The spell is also kind of weird because where you start the spell, like your position on screen, can actually affect it, because there's not that much time between, like the next phase of that spell just starts instantly. So where you're on screen at the start of the next phase can kind of change how it starts. It's really awkward. Anyway, that was it for my no bomb no card run. thank you for watching, and I mean, look forward to more, I guess. This game is actually going to be played on Touhou World Cup in a bonus match, if you didn't know, as well as another pretty cool thing, which is like an extra marathon, no bomb marathon, where the players will like play through a bunch of extra stages that are like randomly decided on stream by like a roulette. So I would encourage everyone to watch this weekend's TWC. You can go to Maribel Hearn's website to see the schedule. I don't think the schedule for the bonus matches, like the exact hour, has been posted yet, but it should soon, so keep an eye out. Anyway, that is all for today. I just wanted to share this run because I'm quite happy with it and just wanted to talk about the game more. See you guys later.